The old man sat quietly in his wooden chair, placed near the window that looked out into the calm, sleeping street. He had chosen this chair many years ago, not because it was beautiful, but because it felt steady and dependable. Over time, it had learned the shape of his body, and now it held him gently, without any sound at all. The room around him was simple and familiar. A soft lamp rested on a small table beside the chair, giving off a warm and steady glow. The light did not flicker or change. It stayed exactly the same, spreading slowly across the floor and touching the walls before fading into quiet shadows. Nothing in the room felt new. Nothing felt old. Everything simply felt settled. Outside the window, the night had completely taken over. The street was empty, the houses dark and silent. No cars passed, no voices carried through the air. Even the distant sounds of the city seemed far away, as if they belonged to another world entirely. The sky was deep and dark, holding stars that remained still and patient. The old man took a slow breath in, filling his lungs gently. He did not rush. He did not force it. When he breathed out, the air left him just as calmly, as if it had nowhere else it needed to be. His breathing found a quiet rhythm, smooth and steady, one breath following the next without effort. His hands rested loosely on his lap. They no longer held tools or worked long hours. They no longer hurried to finish anything. Those days were over. Now his hands stayed warm and relaxed, perfectly content to remain still. The floor beneath his feet felt solid and cool. The house itself seemed to support the silence, holding it carefully so it would not break. The walls stood quietly, the ceiling unmoving. Nothing shifted. Nothing changed. Time moved slowly here. Minutes passed without being noticed. Thoughts drifted in and out without forming complete ideas. The past felt distant and soft. The future felt unnecessary. Only the present moment remained, wide and unhurried. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a pale and gentle light over the empty street. It touched the rooftops, the trees, and the quiet road without making a sound. Everything accepted the light without response. The old man leaned back slightly, allowing his shoulders to relax. His jaw loosened, his forehead smoothed. Any remaining tension quietly slipped away, as if it no longer had a reason to stay. This was not a night for plans. This was not a night for memories. This was a night meant only for rest. The room stayed still. The world stayed calm. And the night continued on, slow and gentle, holding everything in peaceful silence exactly where it belonged. The night did not change as the old man remained where he was. It did not hurry him. It did not ask anything from him. It simply continued, steady and patient, as if it had all the time in the world. He stayed seated, feeling the gentle rise and fall of his breathing. Each breath felt heavier than the last, not in a tiring way, but in a comforting one. His chest lifted slowly, then lowered again, as if guided by something older and wiser than thought. The lamp beside him continued to glow with the same soft light. It did not brighten or dim. It stayed constant, like a quiet companion that understood silence better than words. The shadows in the corners of the room remained still, neither growing nor fading, just resting where they were. Outside, the street looked exactly the same, empty, calm, peaceful. The road stretched forward without movement. The houses stood closed and dark, their windows holding sleep behind them. No footsteps passed. No distant engines disturbed the quiet. The world had chosen to pause. The old man's thoughts slowed even further. They no longer formed sentences. They became small, gentle impressions, sensations rather than ideas. The feeling of the chair beneath him, the cool air near the window, the quiet warmth of the room surrounding his body. His hands remained still on his lap. The fingers rested naturally, slightly curled, as if they had finally found the most comfortable position after many years of movement. There was no need to adjust them, no need to shift. Everything felt exactly right. The house itself seemed to breathe quietly around him. The walls held the warmth. The floor remained steady. Even the ceiling felt distant and unimportant, as if it had stepped back to allow more space for rest. Time continued to stretch. Seconds passed unnoticed. Minutes faded before they could be counted. There was no difference between now and a moment ago. Everything blended together into one long, peaceful moment. The moon outside drifted slowly through the sky, though it felt as if it barely moved at all. Its pale light continued to rest on the rooftops and trees, softening their shapes and edges. Nothing looked sharp. Nothing demanded attention. The old man leaned his head back slightly, allowing his neck to relax. His eyes felt heavy, not from exhaustion, but from comfort. Blinking became slower. The space between each blink grew longer, calmer. This night asked nothing of him. It did not expect effort. It did not require memory. It only offered stillness. The room remained quiet. The street remained empty. The night remained endless. And the old man stayed exactly where he was, gently held by the calm, drifting deeper into the quiet comfort of the moment, without thought, without need, without hurry. Nothing around the old man seemed to notice the passing of time. The night continued to rest quietly, unchanged and unbothered, as if it had decided that this moment would last as long as it needed to. He remained still in his chair, feeling the gentle weight of his body settling deeper into comfort. The chair did not shift beneath him. It stayed firm and steady, holding him in the same position without complaint. The longer he sat there, the more natural it felt, as though he had always been meant to rest there. His breathing slowed even further. The air moved in and out of his lungs smoothly, without pause or effort. Each breath blended into the next, forming a calm rhythm that required no attention. It simply happened, steady and quiet, like a distant tide moving far away from shore. The lamp beside him continued to glow softly. Its light rested on the floor and the nearby wall, creating a small, warm space within the larger darkness of the room. The edges of the furniture softened under the light, losing their sharpness and becoming less defined. Everything looked gentle and calm. Outside the window, the street remained empty. The road stretched forward without a single movement. The trees stood quietly, their branches resting without motion. Even the air seemed still, as if it were carefully avoiding any disturbance. The old man's thoughts faded further into the background. They no longer appeared as memories or plans. Instead, there was only awareness, the feeling of warmth, the quiet of the room, the steady presence of the night. Nothing needed to be remembered. Nothing needed to be prepared for. His hands stayed relaxed in his lap. The fingers felt loose and heavy, warmed by the quiet comfort of stillness. They no longer carried tension. They no longer waited for instructions. They were content to remain exactly as they were. The house felt strong and protective around him. The walls held the warmth inside. The floor remained cool and dependable beneath his feet. The ceiling felt distant and unimportant, allowing the room to feel open and calm. Time continued to lose its meaning. There was no clear beginning or end to this moment. It stretched gently in all directions. unbroken and smooth. The past felt far away. The future felt unnecessary. Only the quiet present remained. The moon outside drifted slowly, its pale light resting softly on the rooftops and the quiet street below. The light did not change the world. It only softened it, making everything feel slower and calmer. The old man's eyes grew heavier. Keeping them open required more effort than closing them, and even that effort felt gentle and unimportant. His eyelids lowered slightly, then rested, then lifted again, each movement slower than the last. This night did not rush him. It did not guide him. It simply allowed him to be. The room stayed silent. The street stayed empty. The world stayed still. And the old man remained there, breathing slowly, resting deeply, drifting forth. The quiet around the old man remained complete and undisturbed. Nothing shifted. Nothing announced itself. The night continued to hold the room in a soft, steady stillness, as if it had gently wrapped everything inside with care. He stayed where he was, breathing slowly, feeling the calm settle deeper into his body. Each breath seemed to travel more quietly than the last, barely noticeable as it entered and left his lungs. There was no effort involved. Breathing felt automatic, natural, and unimportant. The chair beneath him felt warmer now, shaped perfectly to support his back and shoulders. It held him without pressure, without movement. The longer he sat there, the more the chair seemed to disappear, leaving only the sensation of rest behind. The lamp beside him continued to glow with the same gentle light. It cast soft shadows that did not move or change. The light rested peacefully on the nearby wall, the floor, and the edge of the window frame. Nothing reflected sharply. Everything looked calm and settled. Outside, the street remained empty and quiet. The houses stood still, their windows dark and closed. No lights turned on, no doors opened. The world beyond the glass seemed deeply asleep, content to remain undisturbed. The old man's thoughts had slowed to the point where they no longer formed clearly. There were no images, no memories, no plans. There was only a gentle awareness of the present moment, the feeling of warmth, the feeling of quiet, the feeling of being supported. His hands stayed resting in his lap, heavy and relaxed. The fingers did not twitch or move. They felt distant, as if they belonged to someone else entirely. There was no need to move them, no need to adjust anything. The house itself seemed steady and calm. The walls held their position. The floor remained cool and solid beneath his feet. The ceiling stayed high and still, offering no distraction. Everything felt exactly as it should. Time continued to stretch and soften. It no longer moved forward in a straight line. Instead, it spread out gently, becoming wide and unhurried. Moments blended together until they felt like one long, peaceful pause. The moon outside remained low and pale, its light resting softly on the quiet street. It did not brighten or fade. It simply stayed, calm and patient, touching everything gently without asking for attention. The old man leaned his head back a little more, allowing his neck to relax completely. His shoulders dropped further. His body felt heavy in a comforting way, as if gravity itself had become gentle. This night required nothing from him. No effort. No thought. No memory. Only rest. The room stayed silent. The street stayed empty. The night stayed calm. And the old man remained there, breathing slowly and evenly, drifting further into stillness, carried quietly by the endless, peaceful flow of the night. The stillness remained unbroken as the old man continued to rest in his chair. Nothing around him suggested that time was passing at all. The room felt suspended, as if the night had decided to pause everything gently and leave it exactly where it was. His breathing became softer, almost unnoticeable. Each breath moved slowly through him, calm and steady, without thought or control. The air entered quietly, lingered for a moment, and then left just as gently. There was no beginning or end to it. It simply continued, smooth and effortless. The warmth in the room felt even and comforting. The lamp beside him continued to glow without change, its light steady and reassuring. It did not flicker or dim. It stayed exactly the same, as if it had agreed to protect the calm rather than disturb it. The shadows in the corners of the room remained soft and still. Outside the window, the street stayed empty. The road stretched forward into darkness, untouched and silent. The houses stood quietly, holding sleep behind closed doors. The trees did not move. Even the night air seemed to rest, unwilling to disturb the quiet. The old man's body felt heavier now, not from tiredness, but from relaxation. His shoulders rested naturally, no longer holding any tension. His back felt supported. His legs remained still and comfortable, as if they had settled into the exact position they needed. His hands rested where they had been for a long time now, warm and relaxed. The fingers felt loose, no longer aware of their shape or position. They did not need to move. They did not need to do anything. Stillness felt natural. The house around him seemed to share the same calm. The walls stood steady. The floor remained solid beneath his feet. The ceiling felt distant and unimportant. Nothing in the house demanded attention or focus. Everything existed quietly, without effort. Time continued to soften. The idea of minutes and hours faded completely. There was no sense of how long he had been sitting there, and no need to know. The moments stretched gently, wide and slow, without edges. The moon outside continued its slow, patient presence in the sky. Its pale light rested softly on the rooftops and the quiet street below. The light did not change the scene. It only made everything feel calmer, smoother, and less defined. The old man's eyes felt heavy, not in a way that demanded sleep, but in a way that welcomed it. Keeping them open felt unnecessary. Blinking became slower. The space between blinks grew longer and more peaceful. This night did not rush him. It did not guide him forward. It did not ask him to let go. It simply allowed rest to happen naturally. The room stayed silent. The street stayed empty. The world stayed still. And the old man remained gently supported by the quiet of the night, breathing slowly, resting deeply, drifting further into calm without effort, without thought, without need. The quiet did not fade as the old man remained in his chair. If anything, it grew softer, deeper, as though the night itself had leaned closer to listen to nothing at all. The room held its breath, not in tension, but in calm agreement. He stayed still, his body fully settled now. The gentle weight of rest pressed down evenly, comforting rather than heavy. His breathing flowed in a slow, steady rhythm, each breath blending smoothly into the next. There was no pause that needed attention, no moment that stood apart. Everything moved together in a single quiet pattern. The lamp beside him continued its patient glow. The light felt warmer now, not brighter, just softer, as if it had relaxed along with him. The edges of the room seemed less defined. Corners faded gently into shadow, and the space felt wider, calmer, and simpler. Outside the window, the street remained unchanged. Empty pavement stretched forward, undisturbed. The houses stayed dark, their windows closed, holding sleep inside. No sound drifted through the air. The night remained complete and uninterrupted. The old man's thoughts had slowed until they were no longer thoughts at all. There were no words forming in his mind. No images followed one another. There was only the quiet awareness of being present, of existing comfortably within the moment. His hands rested where they had been for a long time now. They felt distant, as if they belonged more to the chair than to him. The fingers stayed relaxed, gently curved, completely still. There was no reason for movement. Stillness felt right. The house seemed steady and protective around him. The walls held warmth without effort. The floor supported his feet quietly. The ceiling felt far away, unimportant, allowing the room to feel open and unconfined. Time no longer felt like something that moved forward. It spread outward instead, becoming wide and soft. The idea of before and after lost meaning. Everything blended together into one long, peaceful moment that did not need to end. The moon outside continued its slow presence in the sky. Its pale light rested on the street and rooftops, smoothing their shapes and softening their edges. Nothing appeared sharp. Nothing stood out. Everything looked calm and gentle. The old man's eyelids lowered slowly. They rested closed for a moment, then lifted slightly, then closed again. Each movement took longer than the last, unhurried and natural. There was no effort involved in letting them rest. This night asked nothing of him. No focus, no memory, no control, only quiet. The room stayed silent. The street stayed empty. The night stayed deep and calm, and the old man remained there, breathing softly, completely supported by stillness, drifting further into rest as the night continued on without end, without sound, and without any need to change. The stillness remained complete as the old man continued to rest in his chair. Nothing around him suggested movement or change. The night stayed exactly as it was, deep and quiet, holding the room in a gentle pause. His breathing stayed slow and steady, so soft that it barely seemed to touch the air. Each breath moved naturally without effort or direction. It felt as though his body no longer needed his attention to breathe. It simply knew what to do, calmly and patiently. The lamp beside him continued to glow with the same gentle warmth. Its light rested softly on the nearby wall and floor, never shifting, never flickering. The shadows stayed where they were, quiet and unremarkable, blending easily into the calm of the room. Outside the window, the street remained empty. The road stretched forward without a single sound. The houses stood still, their dark windows holding sleep behind them. No wind passed through the trees. The night air felt heavy with silence. The old man's body felt completely at ease now. His shoulders rested low and loose. His back felt supported without pressure. His legs stayed still, heavy and relaxed, as if they had settled into the chair permanently. Nothing felt uncomfortable. Nothing needed adjusting. His hands rested quietly in his lap. They felt warm and distant, no longer connected to thought or intention. The fingers stayed gently curled, unmoving, content to remain exactly as they were. Stillness felt natural, effortless. The house around him seemed to share his calm. The walls held the warmth gently. The floor remained cool and solid beneath his feet. The ceiling felt far away and unimportant, allowing the room to feel open and peaceful. Time continued to lose its shape. There was no sense of minutes or hours passing. The idea of time faded, leaving only a soft awareness of the present moment. Everything felt slow, wide, and unhurried. The moon outside remained pale and steady in the sky. Its light rested quietly on rooftops and empty pavement, softening edges and smoothing shadows. Nothing stood out. Nothing demanded attention. The old man's eyelids stayed closed now. Opening them felt unnecessary. The darkness behind his eyes felt calm and comfortable, free of images or thoughts. His breathing continued, slow and even, guiding him deeper into rest. This night did not guide him forward. It did not ask him to let go. It simply allowed him to rest. The room stayed silent. The streets stayed empty. The night stayed gentle. And the old man remained there, fully relaxed, breathing softly, drifting deeper into quiet stillness as the night continued on, unchanged and endless, holding everything in peaceful calm. Nothing disturbed the stillness as the old man remained quietly at rest. The night seemed to stretch gently around him, wide and patient, with no intention of moving forward too quickly. Everything stayed exactly as it was meant to be. His breathing continued at the same slow pace, smooth and even. Each breath flowed naturally into the next, without pause or effort. It felt as though his body had fully remembered how to rest on its own, without instruction or control. The rise and fall of his chest was barely noticeable, calm and steady. The warmth in the room remained constant. The lamp beside him continued to glow softly, its light resting peacefully on the floor and walls. The light did not reach far. It stayed close, creating a small, comfortable space within the larger quiet of the night. Shadows rested gently in the corners, unchanged and unimportant. Outside the window, the street looked exactly the same as before. Empty pavement, quiet houses, still trees. No sound reached the glass. No movement passed through the darkness. The world beyond the room seemed deeply asleep, content to remain untouched. The old man's body felt settled and complete. His shoulders stayed low and relaxed. His neck felt loose, supported easily by the chair. His legs rested heavily, comfortably, as if they no longer remembered what movement felt like. There was no tension anywhere, no place that asked for attention. His hands remained still in his lap. They felt warm and distant, no longer connected to thought or purpose. The fingers stayed gently curled, unmoving, perfectly content in stillness. There was no urge to shift or adjust them. The house around him felt calm and protective. The walls stood quietly, holding warmth inside. The floor remained cool and steady beneath his feet. The ceiling felt distant and unimportant, allowing the room to feel open and peaceful. Time continued to soften. It no longer felt like something that passed. It felt like something that simply existed, wide and slow. Moments blended together smoothly, without edges. There was no clear beginning or end to this quiet pause. The moon outside remained pale and steady, its light resting softly on rooftops and the empty road. The light did not change anything. It only made everything feel slower, gentler, and less defined. The old man's eyelids remained closed. Behind them, there were no images, no thoughts, no memories forming. Only calm darkness remained, quiet and comfortable. His breathing continued, slow and steady, guiding him deeper into rest. This night did not require anything from him. No attention, no effort, no awareness, only stillness. The room stayed silent. The streets stayed empty. The night stayed calm and endless, and the old man remained there, fully relaxed and supported, drifting quietly deeper into rest as the night continued on, gentle and unchanged, holding everything softly in its peaceful embrace. The calm did not break as the old man remained resting in the same quiet position. The night continued to hold everything gently, as if it had no intention of moving forward or changing in any way. Nothing felt urgent. Nothing felt unfinished. His breathing stayed slow and soft. Each breath moved through him without sound, without effort. The air felt cool as it entered, warm as it left, following the same gentle rhythm again and again. There was no need to notice it. The body handled it naturally, peacefully. The lamp beside him still glowed with the same steady light. It had not changed since the evening began. The light rested calmly on the nearby wall and floor, never shifting, never demanding attention. The shadows stayed quiet and loose, blending easily into the corners of the room. Outside the window, the street remained empty and still. The road stretched forward into darkness, untouched by movement. The houses stayed closed and dark, their windows holding deep sleep behind them. No sound reached the glass. No sign of life disturbed the calm. The old man's body felt deeply settled now. His shoulders remained loose and low. His back felt fully supported by the chair. His legs stayed heavy and comfortable, resting without tension. Every part of him felt exactly where it should be. His hands rested quietly in his lap. They felt distant and warm, no longer connected to thought or intention. The fingers stayed gently curled, unmoving, content to remain still. Stillness felt familiar, safe, and natural. The house around him seemed to share his rest. The walls held warmth without effort. The floor remained solid and cool beneath his feet. The ceiling felt far away and unimportant, allowing the room to feel open and calm. Time continued to dissolve. There was no clear sense of before or after. Moments blended together smoothly, forming one long, peaceful stretch of quiet. The idea of counting minutes felt unnecessary and distant. The moon outside remained pale and steady, resting quietly in the sky. Its light continued to soften the shapes of rooftops, trees, and the empty street below. Nothing stood out. Nothing asked to be noticed. The old man's eyelids stayed closed, resting comfortably. Behind them, there were no images forming, no thoughts moving. Only calm darkness remained, wide and gentle. His breathing continued to guide him deeper into rest, steady and unbroken. This night offered no direction. It offered no demands. It offered no questions. Only quiet. The room stayed silent. The street stayed empty. The night stayed deep and calm, and the old man remained there, fully at rest, breathing softly, drifting further into peaceful stillness as the night continued on without sound, without change, and without any need to end. The silence continued to rest gently around the old man, unchanged and complete. Nothing interrupted it. Nothing entered or left the moment. The night remained steady, patient, and quiet, as if it had settled in for the long stay. He stayed seated in the same position, his body fully relaxed now. The gentle rise and fall of his breathing continued without effort. Each breath felt softer than the last, barely touching the air before quietly disappearing. His body no longer asked for attention. It had found its rhythm and remained there comfortably. The lamp beside him still gave off its soft, steady glow. The light seemed almost distant now, as if it had faded into the background of the room without actually changing. It continued to rest on the floor and walls, calm and predictable, never flickering, never shifting. Outside the window, the street remained completely empty. The road stretched forward without sound or movement. The houses stayed dark, holding sleep inside. The trees did not sway. The air itself felt still, as though it had chosen not to move. The old man's shoulders stayed low and loose. His neck felt supported and relaxed. His head rested comfortably without strain. Every part of his body felt settled, as if it had gently fallen into place and decided to stay there. His hands remained quietly in his lap. The warmth in them felt distant, no longer important. The fingers stayed softly curled, unmoving. There was no desire to shift or adjust them. Stillness felt natural and safe. The house around him felt steady and calm. The walls stood quietly, holding warmth inside. The floor remained solid beneath his feet. The ceiling felt far away and unimportant, allowing the room to feel open and peaceful. Time had fully lost its meaning now. There was no sense of how long he had been sitting there. There was no need to know. The moment stretched gently, wide and smooth, without edges or direction. The moon outside remained pale and quiet in the sky. Its light continued to rest softly on rooftops and the empty street below, smoothing everything it touched. The world looked calm and distant, as if it existed somewhere far away. The old man's eyelids stayed closed, resting comfortably. Behind them there were no thoughts forming, no images appearing. Only calm darkness remained, quiet and steady. His breathing continued, slow and even, guiding him deeper into rest. This night did not move him forward. It did not pull him back. It simply allowed him to remain. The room stayed silent. The street stayed empty. The night stayed deep and gentle, and the old man remained there, completely at ease, breathing softly, resting deeply, drifting further into the peaceful stillness of the night, where nothing needed to change and nothing needed to happen. The quiet remained gentle and complete, as if it had settled permanently into the room. Nothing disturbed it. Nothing challenged it. The night continued to exist without direction, without urgency, and without sound. The old man stayed exactly where he was, resting deeply in his chair. His breathing moved so softly now that it felt more like a feeling than an action. Air entered and left his body in a slow, steady rhythm, unnoticed and unimportant. There was no effort involved. His body knew how to rest, and it did so naturally. The lamp beside him continued to glow with the same familiar warmth. Its light felt distant, almost forgotten, though it had not changed at all. It rested quietly on the floor and walls, offering a calm presence without asking for attention. The shadows remained soft and still, blending gently into the room. Outside the window, the street stayed silent and empty. The road stretched forward into darkness, untouched by movement. The houses remained closed, their windows dark and peaceful. The trees stood motionless, their branches resting as if they too had fallen asleep. The old man's body felt fully settled now. His shoulders remained low and relaxed. His back felt comfortably supported. His legs stayed heavy and still, resting without tension. There was no place in his body that asked for movement or adjustment. His hands rested quietly in his lap, warm and distant. The fingers stayed gently curled, unmoving, content to remain at rest. They no longer felt connected to thought or purpose. Stillness had become their natural state. The house around him felt calm and protective. The walls held warmth gently. The floor remained solid and cool beneath his feet. The ceiling felt far away and unimportant, allowing the room to feel open and unconfined. Everything existed quietly, without effort. Time continued to soften and fade. The idea of minutes and hours no longer made sense. There was no difference between now and a moment ago. Everything blended together into one long, peaceful stretch of quiet, smooth and unbroken. The moon outside remained pale and steady in the sky. Its light rested softly on rooftops and the empty street below, smoothing edges and softening shadows. Nothing stood out. Nothing demanded attention. The old man's eyelids stayed closed, resting easily. Behind them, there were no images forming, no thoughts drifting through. Only calm darkness remained, wide and gentle. His breathing continued, slow and even, carrying him deeper into rest. This night did not ask him to go anywhere. It did not ask him to remember anything. It did not ask him to let go. It simply allowed him to remain. The room stayed silent. The street stayed empty. The night stayed deep and calm, and the old man remained there completely at ease, breathing softly, resting deeply, drifting further into the quiet comfort of the night, where nothing needed to change and nothing needed to happen. The quiet remained gentle and complete, as if it had settled permanently into the room. Nothing disturbed it. Nothing challenged it. The night continued to exist without direction, without urgency, and without sound. The old man stayed exactly where he was, resting deeply in his chair. His breathing moved so softly now that it felt more like a feeling than an action. Air entered and left his body in a slow, steady rhythm, unnoticed and unimportant. There was no effort involved. His body knew how to rest, and it did so naturally. The lamp beside him continued to glow with the same familiar warmth. Its light felt distant, almost forgotten, though it had not changed at all. It rested quietly on the floor and walls, offering a calm presence without asking for attention. The shadows remained soft and still, blending gently into the room. Outside the window, the street stayed silent and empty. The road stretched forward into darkness, untouched by movement. The houses remained closed, their windows dark and peaceful. The trees stood motionless, their branches resting as if they too had fallen asleep. The old man's body felt fully settled now. His shoulders remained low and relaxed. His back felt comfortably supported. His legs stayed heavy and still, resting without tension. There was no place in his body that asked for movement or adjustment. His hands rested quietly in his lap, warm and distant. The fingers stayed gently curled, unmoving, content to remain at rest. They no longer felt connected to thought or purpose. Stillness had become their natural state. The house around him felt calm and protective. The walls held warmth gently. The floor remained solid and cool beneath his feet. The ceiling felt far away and unimportant, allowing the room to feel open and unconfined. Everything existed quietly, without effort. Time continued to soften and fade. The idea of minutes and hours no longer made sense. There was no difference between now and a moment ago. Everything blended together into one long, peaceful stretch of quiet, smooth and unbroken. The moon outside remained pale and steady in the sky. Its light rested softly on rooftops and the empty street below, smoothing edges and softening shadows. Nothing stood out. Nothing demanded attention. The old man's eyelids stayed closed, resting easily. Behind them, there were no images forming, no thoughts drifting through. Only calm darkness remained, wide and gentle. His breathing continued, slow and even, carrying him deeper into rest. This night did not ask him to go anywhere. It did not ask him to remember anything. It did not ask him to let go. It simply allowed him to remain. The room stayed silent. The street stayed empty. The night stayed deep and calm. And the old man remained there, completely at ease, breathing softly, resting deeply, drifting further into the quiet comfort of the night, where nothing needed to change and nothing needed to happen. The room remained still after the old clock finished its soft chime. Its final echo faded into the wooden walls, as if the house itself had taken a slow breath and decided to rest again. The old man sat quietly by the window, his hands folded, his eyes half closed. Outside, the night stretched wide and patient. The moonlight rested gently on the garden path, turning stones into silver memories. He did not move at once. Instead, he listened. The house had a language of its own. Small creaks, distant sighs, the faint whisper of cooling wood. These sounds were not noise. They were reminders. Proof that the house was alive, just as it had always been. He rose slowly and walked toward the bookshelf near the fireplace. One book stood slightly apart from the others. Its cover was worn, its spine bent from years of use. He did not need to read the title. His hands already knew it. As he opened the book, a thin photograph slipped out and landed softly on the rug. He picked it up. A younger version of himself stared back, standing beside someone whose face time had tried but failed to erase. Her smile was calm, familiar, safe. For a long moment, he simply looked. There was no sadness in his eyes now, only warmth. The kind that settles deep in the chest and stays. He placed the photograph back inside the book and returned it to the shelf, not as it was before, but slightly more visible. Some memories, he believed, deserved light. The kettle in the kitchen let out a quiet click as it cooled. He poured himself a cup of warm water, holding it carefully, feeling the heat travel into his palms. It reminded him that he was still here, still breathing, still part of the night. He carried the cup to his chair and sat down again. The fire had softened into glowing embers. Their light danced gently across the walls, slow and unhurried. Shadows moved like old friends, familiar and welcome. He closed his eyes. In his mind, the house shifted, not into the past, not into dreams, but into a peaceful space between. A place where nothing needed to be fixed, where nothing was missing. Outside, the wind brushed against the windows, not to enter, but to say hello. The old man smiled faintly. Tomorrow could wait. Memories could rest. Even time itself seemed willing to pause just for this moment. And as the night continued its quiet watch, the house held him gently, the way it always had. steady, patient, and kind. The story did not end. It simply breathed and waited for the next gentle moment to unfold. The old man remained in his chair, breathing slowly, as if matching his rhythm to the quiet heart of the house. The embers in the fireplace dimmed further, glowing like distant stars that had decided not to shine too brightly. Somewhere deep within the walls, a soft, settling sound echoed. Wood adjusting to the cool air, the house gently reminding him that time was still moving, even when it felt still. He opened his eyes. The room looked softer now, edges blurred by shadow, colors muted into calm shades of brown and gold. Everything felt exactly where it belonged. He reached for the blanket folded beside the chair and draped it over his legs. The familiar weight brought comfort, the kind that did not ask questions or demand attention. Outside, a single leaf detached from its branch and floated down onto the path. He watched it through the window, following its slow, unplanned journey until it came to rest. "Even falling can be gentle," he whispered, though no one needed to hear. His thoughts drifted, not sharply, not deeply, but like a boat moving across still water. He remembered mornings filled with quiet routines, evenings shaped by shared silence, and nights like this one, where nothing happened, yet everything felt complete. The clock did not chime again. It understood. He leaned his head back and allowed his eyes to close once more. His breathing deepened, steady and unbroken. The house responded in kind, holding the warmth, guarding the calm. If dreams came, they would come slowly. If sleep arrived, it would be welcomed. And if neither did, that was fine too. The night was patient. The house was listening. And the old man rested, right in the middle of it all. The night continued the way it always had, without announcement, without urgency. The old man did not move for a long while. His hands rested loosely on the arms of the chair, fingers relaxed as if they had forgotten the idea of holding on to anything at all. The blanket rose and fell gently with his breathing, slow and even, like a tide that had learned not to rush. The house seemed to lean inward, listening. Somewhere in the distance, a clock ticked, not loudly, not insistently, but with a soft patience, counting moments that did not need to be remembered. Each second passed without expectation, slipping quietly into the next. The old man's mind wandered again, not toward sharp memories, but toward feelings. The feeling of warm light in the early morning, the feeling of sitting quietly while the world carried on somewhere else, the feeling of knowing that nothing more was required of him tonight. He opened his eyes halfway. The ceiling above him was dim, shadows drifting slowly as the fire's glow weakened. He had seen this ceiling thousands of times, yet each night it felt slightly different, as if the darkness rearranged it just enough to make it new. He listened. There was the faint hum of electricity in the walls, the distant sound of wind brushing against the outside of the house. A calm, layered silence that felt almost alive. He adjusted his posture slightly, careful not to disturb the stillness. The chair responded with a quiet creak, a familiar sound, an old companion. It had held him through many nights like this one, nights when sleep came easily, and nights when it did not. Neither kind of night felt wrong anymore. He rested his head back again, eyes closing fully now. His breathing slowed further, drifting into a deeper rhythm. Thoughts became longer, stretched thin, like clouds slowly dissolving into the dark sky. If he dreamed, the dreams were soft and without shape. If he did not, the rest was enough on its own. The night accepted him as he was. The silence wrapped around him gently, and the world for now asked nothing more. The night remained exactly as it was, unchanging and unbothered. The old man stayed in his chair, eyes closed now, his face relaxed into a softness that only came when nothing was expected of him. His breathing was slow, deep, and steady, each breath taking its time, as if there was no reason to hurry toward the next one. The fire in the hearth had faded further. What once had been flickering light was now only a quiet glow, barely moving, barely warm. It did not complain. It did not resist. It simply continued to exist for as long as it could. The room felt heavier in a comforting way, like a thick blanket of silence laid gently over everything. The walls stood still. The floor did not creak. Even the shadows seemed tired, resting in place without drifting. The old man's thoughts loosened their grip. They did not form full memories, only fragments. The idea of a long road, the sound of footsteps long ago, the feeling of sitting beside someone without speaking. These thoughts came and went without effort, like leaves floating on slow water. Outside, the wind paused. For a moment, nothing moved at all. Then softly it returned, brushing against the house with a sound so faint it barely existed. The old man did not open his eyes, but he felt it, the way one feels a familiar presence without needing to look. He shifted slightly in the chair, just enough to be more comfortable. The blanket slid a little lower, settling naturally over his knees. His hands rested there now, warm and still. Time passed. Or perhaps it didn't. It was hard to tell anymore. The clock remained silent, choosing not to mark this stretch of the night. It had done enough counting already. Now it seemed content to let the darkness move on its own. The old man's breathing slowed further, drifting into a rhythm that belonged more to sleep than to waking. His shoulders sank gently, releasing whatever weight they had been carrying without him noticing. If someone had been watching, they might not have known whether he was asleep or awake. But it did not matter. The night did not need a label. The house continued to hold him, steady and quiet, as it always had. The air remained cool but kind. The silence stayed full, never empty. Nothing needed to happen next. Nothing needed to change. And in that stillness, the old man rested, peacefully, completely, while the night carried on, slow and patient, toward whatever came after. The night moved forward without making a sound. The old man remained where he was, still and settled, as if the chair had slowly become part of him and he had become part of the room. His breathing stayed deep and unhurried, each breath flowing into the next without pause, without effort. The glow in the fireplace was now barely visible, a soft memory of warmth rather than warmth itself. It cast no real light anymore, only a suggestion of it, enough to remind the room that it had once been brighter. The air felt thicker, calmer. Somewhere far outside, a distant sound passed through the darkness. Perhaps a car on an empty road, perhaps only the wind shifting direction. It did not last long. It never does at this hour. The old man's mind drifted again, but even more slowly now. Thoughts no longer formed clearly. They stretched out, thinning as they moved, dissolving before they could become anything solid. There was a sense of time passing, but no awareness of how much. Minutes and hours felt the same here, blended together into one long, quiet moment. His head tilted slightly to one side, finding a more comfortable angle. The movement was small, careful, as though he did not want to disturb the calm that surrounded him. The chair responded with silence this time, as if it too had decided to rest. The house remained steady. No doors shifted. No floors sighed. No walls spoke. It was a rare kind of stillness, the kind that did not feel empty, but full and complete, needing nothing added to it. The old man's hands rested loosely on his lap, fingers relaxed, no longer holding tension or memory. They had done enough work for one lifetime. Tonight, they were allowed to be still. His breathing slowed again, almost imperceptibly, moving closer and closer to sleep. If dreams waited nearby, they waited patiently, knowing there was no rush. Outside, the sky remained dark, unchanging. Stars held their places quietly, and clouds moved so slowly they could barely be said to move at all. The night accepted everything as it was. It did not ask the old man to sleep. It did not ask him to wake. It simply stayed with him. And there, in the quiet center of the house, wrapped in shadow and calm, the old man rested, balanced gently between thought and dream, while the night continued its slow, endless watch. The night continued without interruption, flowing gently forward like a slow river that never needed direction. The old man remained still, yet deeply present within the quiet. His breathing had found its most natural rhythm now, slow and even, rising and falling without thought. Each breath seemed to belong not only to him, but to the room itself, as if the house was breathing alongside him. The darkness grew softer, not heavier. Shadows settled into places they seemed to have chosen long ago, resting comfortably against the walls and corners. Nothing shifted. Nothing asked to be noticed. The chair supported him completely. Its worn arms and faded fabric carried the warmth of many nights like this one. It had learned the shape of his rest, and tonight it held him without complaint. Time passed in a way that could not be measured. The idea of minutes and hours had quietly stepped aside. What remained was a long, gentle moment that stretched without effort, calm and unbroken. Somewhere outside, far beyond the house, the world continued. Roads empty, lights dimmed, voices quieted, but none of it reached him here. The night had created a small pocket of stillness, and he rested safely within it. His thoughts were no longer thoughts at all. They were only sensations now. Warmth, weight, calm, the steady sense of being exactly where he needed to be. His head leaned slightly deeper into the back of the chair. The movement was slow, almost unintentional, guided by comfort rather than choice. His shoulders released another small layer of tension, as if they had been holding on out of habit alone. The air felt smooth as it moved in and out of his lungs. Cool, but not cold. Still, but not empty. The house remained quiet, watchful in its own way. It had seen many nights like this, and it knew how to hold them gently. The walls stood firm, the floor rested, the ceiling remained patient. Sleep hovered nearby now, not demanding, not pulling, simply waiting. It understood that it would arrive when it was ready, and not a moment sooner. The old man did not reach for it. He did not need to. Rest was already here. The night continued to hold its quiet shape, unbroken and calm. The old man remained still in the chair, his body now fully surrendered to rest. His breathing was so slow and even that it blended completely into the silence of the room. It felt less like breathing, and more like a gentle tide, moving in and out without effort. The darkness deepened slightly, though it did not grow heavier. It was the kind of darkness that softened everything it touched, smoothing edges and easing distance. The room felt larger now, as if the quiet had stretched it gently outward. The chair remained steady beneath him. Its presence was constant, familiar, offering support without asking for attention. It had learned his weight over time, learned how to hold him without resistance. Thoughts no longer formed in his mind. There were no words, no images, no directions. Only a sense of calm awareness remained, faint and drifting, like the last ripple on still water. Time continued to move, though it no longer mattered how. Minutes and hours slipped past without leaving a mark. The night did not measure itself. It simply existed. Outside, the air remained still. The wind had quieted completely, resting wherever it had last passed. Trees stood without movement. The world seemed to pause, content to wait. The old man's shoulders rested low and loose, free from tension. His hands lay warm and relaxed, fingers slightly curved, doing nothing at all. His face remained soft, peaceful, untouched by worry or thought. The house stayed watchful in its own silent way. The walls held steady, the floor remained firm. The ceiling hovered quietly above, unchanged and patient. Sleep drew nearer, not as a sudden pull, but as a gentle closeness. It waited beside him, calm and respectful, knowing it would be welcomed soon enough. The old man did not move toward it. He did not need to. Rest had already settled deep within him, and so the night continued, slow and steady, carrying him gently forward through the darkness, protecting the quiet, allowing everything to remain as it was, peaceful, balanced, and complete. The night felt settled, as if it had finally reached the depth it had been slowly moving toward all along. The old man remained in the chair, his body heavy in the most comfortable way. His breathing was deep and slow, each breath stretching gently before returning, like a long, quiet wave reaching the shore and then pulling back again. There was no effort left in him now, no intention, only rest. The room seemed to drift further into darkness, though it never became unsettling. Instead, it grew softer, calmer, as if the shadows themselves were tired and ready to rest. The familiar shapes around him faded gently, losing their sharpness until they felt distant and unimportant. The chair continued to hold him without sound. Its presence was steady and dependable, shaped by years of quiet evenings and unspoken moments. Tonight, it carried him easily, asking nothing in return. Time no longer moved in a straight line. It felt wide and slow, spreading out evenly, without edges. There was no sense of before or after, only a long stretch of quiet that did not need to end. Outside the house, the night remained still. No wind passed through the trees. No distant sounds reached the walls. The world beyond seemed to have paused, leaving this small space untouched. The old man's hands rested loosely on his lap, warm and relaxed. His fingers no longer held tension or memory. They remained gently curved, as if they had forgotten the habit of holding on. His face stayed calm, every line softened by rest. His jaw rested naturally. His brow remained smooth. Even the smallest muscles had released their work. The air in the room felt balanced and kind. Each breath moved easily, carrying calm deeper into him without effort. Sleep hovered close now, not heavy, not demanding, simply present. The house stood quietly around him, protective in its stillness. The walls absorbed the silence. The floor remained firm and patient. The ceiling watched without movement. Nothing asked him to wake. Nothing asked him to think. Nothing asked him to move. The night continued slowly, carrying him forward in its gentle rhythm, holding the quiet carefully, allowing rest to deepen fully and naturally. Everything remained exactly as it needed to be. The night continued its quiet presence, steady and unbroken, as though it had settled permanently into this moment. The old man remained where he was, resting deeply into the chair. His breathing stayed slow and calm, moving in a rhythm that felt older than thought itself. Each breath traveled gently through him, filling the space inside before leaving again without hurry. The darkness in the room grew more complete, yet never heavy. It wrapped around the walls and furniture like a soft layer, smoothing everything it touched. The room felt distant now, as if it had slowly stepped back, giving him more space to rest. The chair held him with familiar ease. Its worn surface carried the quiet history of many nights like this one. Nights spent sitting, listening, and letting time pass without resistance. Tonight it remained still, offering support without sound. Time stretched gently, losing its shape. There was no sense of minutes passing, no awareness of hours. The night moved forward on its own terms, slow and patient, unconcerned with counting. Outside, the world stayed quiet. Streets remained empty. Lights stayed off. Even the air felt still, as though it had paused to rest along with everything else. The old man's hands rested loosely on his lap, warm and relaxed. His fingers did not move. They no longer remembered the need to hold or grip. They simply rested, content to be still. His face remained soft and peaceful. Every line had eased. His expression held no worry, no expectation. Only calm remained, settled deeply and comfortably. The house continued to stand quietly around him. The walls absorbed every hint of sound. The floor remained steady and patient. The ceiling hovered above, unchanged and silent. Sleep stayed close now, gentle and unhurried. It did not pull him in. It did not rush him forward. It waited calmly, knowing it would arrive at exactly the right moment. The old man did not move. He did not need to. Rest had already settled fully within him, and so the night carried on, slow and steady, protecting the stillness, allowing the calm to deepen naturally, without interruption, without demand, without end. The night remained gentle and unchanging, as though it had decided to stay exactly as it was for a long while. The old man rested deeply in the chair, his body fully supported, fully relaxed. His breathing continued its slow, steady pattern, moving in and out without effort. Each breath felt softer than the one before, blending smoothly into the quiet of the room. The darkness held steady, calm and even. It did not press in or pull away. It simply existed, filling the space with a quiet presence that felt familiar and safe. The shapes of the room were now barely noticeable, softened until they felt far away. The chair beneath him remained still, its familiar shape holding his weight with ease. It had learned how to remain silent during moments like this, offering comfort without interruption. Tonight, it did exactly that. Time continued to pass unnoticed. It no longer felt like something moving forward. Instead, it felt wide and still, as though the night had stretched itself out and decided to rest. Outside, nothing stirred. The air stayed calm. The trees remained still. The world beyond the walls seemed distant and quiet, as if it had stepped aside to allow this moment of rest to remain untouched. The old man's hands stayed loose on his lap, warm and unmoving. His fingers were gently curved, relaxed in a way that suggested they had nothing left to do and nowhere left to go. His face remained peaceful. Every line softened by rest, every trace of tension long gone. His expression carried no thought, no concern, only calm acceptance of the quiet around him. The house stood quietly, steady and watchful. The walls held the silence carefully. The floor remained firm beneath years of stillness. The ceiling hovered above without change. Sleep remained close now, gentle and patient. It did not demand his attention. It waited calmly, knowing it would be welcomed when the moment felt right. The old man stayed exactly where he was, balanced between waking and sleep. He did not reach forward. He did not pull away. The night continued slowly, carrying him gently along its calm path, protecting the stillness, allowing rest to deepen naturally, without sound, without effort, without end. The night continued to rest in silence, unchanged and patient, as though it had nowhere else it needed to be. The old man remained in the chair, settled deeply now, his body fully at ease. His breathing moved slowly and evenly, each breath gentle and unforced. It felt as though his chest rose and fell on its own, without thought, without intention. The darkness stayed calm and complete. It did not grow thicker or thinner. It simply remained, softening everything within the room. The edges of furniture faded further until the space felt more like a quiet feeling than a place. The chair supported him steadily, familiar and dependable. Its worn surface carried the warmth of countless quiet nights, and tonight it offered that warmth freely, without sound or movement. Time felt distant now. It no longer moved in a way that could be noticed. Moments stretched and blended together, forming a long, quiet stillness that did not ask to be measured. Outside the house, the world remained far away. No sounds reached the walls. No movement disturbed the calm. The night beyond the windows felt just as still as the room itself. The old man's hands rested comfortably on his lap, warm and relaxed. His fingers remained still, no longer holding tension or thought. They had settled into rest, content to remain exactly where they were. His face stayed soft and peaceful. His jaw rested loosely. His brow was smooth. Every small muscle had released its work, allowing calm to settle fully. The house continued to stand quietly around him. The walls absorbed the silence with care. The floor remained firm and steady beneath years of stillness. The ceiling hovered above, unchanged and patient. Sleep lingered close, gentle and unhurried. It did not rush him forward or pull him under. It waited calmly, knowing it would arrive naturally without effort. The old man did not move. He did not need to. Rest had already reached him. And so the night carried on, slow and steady, holding the quiet carefully, allowing the calm to deepen further until nothing else mattered and nothing else was needed. The night remained quiet and settled, as if it had decided nothing more was required of it. The old man stayed in the chair, unmoving, his body fully relaxed into the stillness. His breathing continued slowly and evenly, each breath arriving and leaving without effort. There was a softness to it now, a gentle depth that belonged more to rest than to wakefulness. The darkness in the room felt complete but comforting. It wrapped gently around the space, smoothing away detail until only calm remained. The room no longer felt like a collection of objects, but like a single, quiet place holding him safely. The chair beneath him remained steady and silent. Its familiar shape supported him without shifting, without sound. It had learned over many nights when to remain still, and tonight it did so perfectly. Time felt distant and unimportant. It no longer moved forward in a way that could be followed. Instead, it seemed to spread out evenly, forming a wide, quiet moment that did not need to end. Outside, the world remained still. No wind moved through the trees. No distant sounds reached the house. Everything beyond the walls seemed to have paused, content to let this quiet continue. The old man's hands rested loosely on his lap, warm and relaxed. His fingers stayed gently curved, free from tension, free from thought. They remained exactly where they had settled, as if they had forgotten how to move. His face stayed peaceful and calm, every line softened by rest. His expression held no worry, no memory, no expectation. Only quiet remained. The house continued to stand around him, steady and patient. The walls absorbed the silence. The floor remained firm beneath him. The ceiling stayed unchanged, quietly watching over the night. Sleep hovered very close now, gentle and calm. It did not pull or push. It simply waited, knowing there was no need to hurry. The old man remained still, balanced comfortably between waking and sleep. He did not reach forward. He did not pull away. He allowed the calm to deepen naturally, and so the night continued, slow and steady, carrying him gently onward, protecting the silence, holding the quiet carefully, until nothing else mattered and everything felt complete. The night remained settled, deep, and unbroken, as if it had reached a point where nothing more needed to happen. The old man continued to rest in the chair, his body fully surrendered to comfort. His breathing moved slowly and steadily, each breath long and smooth, rising gently before fading away again. There was no effort in it now, no awareness of breathing at all. It simply happened quietly and naturally. The darkness around him felt complete, yet kind. It softened every corner of the room, blurring the shapes of furniture until they felt distant and unimportant. The room no longer demanded attention. It existed only to hold the calm. The chair remained solid and dependable beneath him. Its worn arms and familiar shape supported his weight without sound. Over many years it had learned how to carry stillness, and tonight it did so without the slightest movement. Time had lost its meaning entirely. There was no sense of minutes passing, no awareness of hours slipping by. The night felt wide and open, stretching gently in all directions, unmeasured and unconcerned. Outside the house, the world remained quiet. Roads were empty. Lights were dim or gone completely. The air itself felt at rest, as if it had chosen to remain still for the night. The old man's hand stayed relaxed on his lap, warm and heavy in the most comfortable way. His fingers did not move. They no longer remembered tension or purpose. They rested, content to be still. His face remained soft and peaceful. His jaw rested loosely. His brow was smooth and untroubled. Every small muscle had released its work, allowing rest to settle deeply and completely. The house stood quietly around him, protective and patient. The walls absorbed the silence carefully, holding it in place. The floor remained firm and steady beneath him, unchanged by time. The ceiling hovered above, quiet and unmoving. Sleep felt very near now, close enough to be felt but not forced. It lingered beside him, gentle and respectful, waiting for the moment when it would be welcomed fully. The old man did not move toward it. He did not need to. Rest had already reached its deepest place. And so the night continued slowly, calmly, carrying him forward without sound, without urgency, holding the stillness carefully, allowing everything to remain exactly as it was, quiet, balanced, and complete. The night stayed exactly as it was, deep and steady, as if it had settled into a long, comfortable pause. The old man remained in the chair, his body now completely at rest. There was no tension left in him at all. His breathing flowed slowly and evenly, each breath long and smooth, arriving gently and leaving without effort. It felt as though the night itself was breathing with him, matching his rhythm perfectly. The darkness in the room felt full, but never heavy. It softened every surface, every edge, until the space felt less like a room and more like a quiet shelter. The furniture faded into the background, no longer asking to be seen or noticed. Everything existed simply to support the stillness. The chair held him with familiar patience. Its worn fabric carried warmth gathered over many quiet nights. Tonight, it did not shift or creak. It seemed to understand that this moment belonged to silence. Time no longer felt like something that moved. It felt wide and slow, stretched gently across the night. Minutes blended into one another until they lost their shape entirely. There was no beginning here, and no clear end. Outside the house, the world rested. Roads lay empty under the dark sky. Windows stayed unlit. Even distant sounds seemed to have disappeared, leaving the night smooth and uninterrupted. The old man's hands rested loosely on his lap, heavy and warm. His fingers remained gently curved, relaxed beyond thought. They had forgotten the idea of holding on, content to remain still. His face stayed calm and peaceful. Every line had softened. His jaw rested naturally. His brow remained smooth, free of worry, free of memory. His expression belonged fully to rest. The house continued to stand around him, steady and protective. The walls absorbed the quiet carefully, as if guarding it. The floor remained firm beneath him, unchanged and dependable. The ceiling hovered above, silent and patient. Sleep felt very close now, closer than before. It did not rush him. It did not pull him forward. It waited calmly, knowing there was no need to hurry. The old man did not move. He did not think. He simply rested. And so the night continued its slow, gentle journey, carrying him forward without sound, without urgency, holding the stillness carefully, allowing the calm to deepen further, until nothing else mattered, and everything felt complete. The night remained settled, as though it had decided this stillness was exactly where it wanted to stay. The old man continued resting in the chair, his body completely at ease. There was no tension left to release, no movement left to make. His breathing flowed slowly and deeply, each breath long and unbroken, moving in and out as gently as the quiet around him. It felt natural, effortless, as if breathing itself had become part of the night. The darkness in the room felt soft and steady. It did not press against the walls or crowd the space. Instead, it rested calmly, allowing everything within it to remain gentle and quiet. Shapes were barely visible now, faded into shadow, no longer demanding attention or meaning. The chair beneath him remained firm and dependable. Its familiar shape supported his weight with complete understanding. It had learned over many evenings like this one how to hold stillness without complaint. Tonight, it offered comfort without sound, without movement. Time felt distant and unimportant. It no longer moved forward in a way that could be followed. Moments stretched smoothly, blending together until they formed one long, quiet presence. There was no reason to count. There was no need to know how long the night had been here, or how long it would remain. Outside the house, the world stayed quiet. Streets rested empty beneath the dark sky. Windows remained dark. Even the air felt calm, as if it had slowed itself to match the night. The old man's hand stayed warm and relaxed on his lap. His fingers did not shift or tighten. They remained gently curved, completely at rest, free from purpose or thought. They had done everything they needed to do. His face remained peaceful. His jaw rested loosely. His brow stayed smooth and relaxed. Every small muscle had settled fully, allowing calm to spread without resistance. The house stood quietly around him, steady and protective. The walls absorbed the silence carefully. The floor remained firm beneath him, unchanged and patient. The ceiling hovered above, silent and unmoving. Sleep lingered very close now, close enough to be felt without being forced. It did not hurry him. It did not pull him away. It waited calmly, knowing there was no rush. The old man did not move toward it. He did not turn away. He remained exactly where he was, balanced gently between waking and sleep, resting deeply within the quiet. And so the night continued, slow and unbroken, carrying him forward without sound, without urgency, holding the stillness carefully, allowing everything to remain calm, complete, and perfectly undisturbed. The stillness did not break. It stayed exactly as it was, wide and gentle, filling the room without effort. Nothing asked to be noticed. Nothing demanded a response. The night simply remained, calm and patient, allowing everything within it to slow even further. The old man stayed in the chair, resting in a way that felt deeper than sleep, yet lighter than thought. His breathing continued its slow rhythm, steady and unchanging, each breath flowing naturally into the next. There were no pauses, no sharp movements, only a smooth, quiet pattern that matched the calm around him. The darkness seemed warmer now, softer than before. It wrapped the room without weight, allowing every surface to fade gently into rest. The corners of the room no longer felt distant or defined. They blended together, forming one continuous sense of peace. The chair remained beneath him, unmoving and dependable. It did not creak or shift. It simply held just as it always had, understanding the importance of staying perfectly still. Tonight, it carried more than weight. It carried rest. Time continued to drift away. It felt as though minutes and hours had forgotten how to separate themselves. Everything existed within a single, endless moment. There was no beginning here, and no need for an end. Outside, the night air stayed calm. No sudden sounds passed by. No movement disturbed the quiet streets. The world beyond the walls seemed to have joined the same slow rhythm, resting deeply beneath the sky. The old man's shoulders sank a little further, releasing the last traces of effort they had been holding. His neck rested comfortably, supported without strain. His head remained still, balanced naturally, as though it had found the perfect place to pause. His hands remained where they were, warm and relaxed. There was no tension in his fingers, no need to move them. They stayed gently curved, peaceful and still, as if they belonged entirely to the quiet. Thoughts, if they came at all, moved slowly and softly. They passed through without shape or meaning, dissolving almost as soon as they appeared. There was nothing to hold on to, and nothing worth holding. The house continued to protect the calm within it. Walls stood steady and silent. The floor remained firm and supportive. Everything held its place without effort. Sleep drew closer, not as something separate, but as a natural extension of the stillness. It waited quietly, patient and kind, knowing it would arrive when it was ready. The old man remained suspended in this gentle space, neither reaching nor resisting. He allowed the night to carry him, slowly and carefully, deeper into calm. And so everything stayed quiet. Everything stayed still. And the night continued on, smooth and unbroken, holding him softly as the silence deepened even further. Nothing changed, and yet everything felt deeper. The silence did not grow louder, nor did it fade. It simply settled, like a soft blanket placed gently over the night. The air remained still, untroubled, moving only enough to exist. Even the smallest sense of motion felt unnecessary. The old man remained exactly where he was, supported fully by the quiet around him. His breathing continued in its slow, even rhythm, each breath unhurried, each release effortless. It felt as though his body had remembered something ancient, something simple, and had returned to it without question. The room held its shape without insisting on attention. Shadows stayed where they were, resting comfortably along the walls. Nothing flickered. Nothing shifted. The darkness was complete, but never heavy, allowing everything inside it to relax. Time no longer felt measurable. It stretched softly, becoming something smooth and endless. Seconds did not pass. They melted, blending into one another until they could no longer be separated. The chair beneath him remained steady and calm. It carried him without sound, without movement, as though it understood the importance of stillness. Tonight, it did not support effort. It supported rest. Outside, the world remained quiet. The sky stayed wide and patient. No distant noise reached the house. No sudden sound disturbed the night. Everything beyond the walls seemed to be resting as deeply as he was. His shoulders remained low and relaxed, free from weight. His chest rose and fell gently, never rushing, never slowing, just existing in a perfect balance. His neck stayed loose, comfortable, held naturally in place. The old man's face was peaceful, smooth with rest. No tension remained behind his eyes. His jaw rested easily, unclenched, unbothered. Every small muscle had found permission to let go. Thoughts drifted slowly, appearing only briefly before fading away. They did not form stories or images. They had no shape, no direction. They passed like soft clouds, dissolving into the calm without leaving a trace. The house continued to hold the quiet together. The walls stood firm and protective. The floor remained cool and steady beneath the chair. Everything worked together to preserve the stillness. Sleep was no longer approaching. It was already there. It wrapped gently around the moment, blending perfectly with the silence. There was no edge where wakefulness ended and sleep began. One simply flowed into the other, seamless and kind. The old man rested within it, carried effortlessly by the night. He did not sink. He did not drift away. He simply remained, held safely in a calm that asked for nothing more. And the night stayed steady. The silence stayed complete, and everything continued exactly as it was, deepening softly, moment by moment without ever needing to change. The calm did not break. It remained exactly as it was, smooth and unshaken, like a quiet lake with no wind to disturb its surface. The stillness felt complete, not empty, full in the gentlest way possible. The old man's breathing continued, slow and even, each breath arriving without effort and leaving without resistance. His body no longer reacted to the night. It belonged to it. Every inhale felt familiar. Every exhale felt final, as though nothing more needed to be done. The darkness stayed soft, wrapping the room without pressing in. It allowed space, allowed comfort. The edges of the room faded just enough to remove all detail, leaving only a sense of safety behind. Time felt distant now, almost forgotten. There was no past pulling backward, no future waiting ahead. Everything existed only here, only now, resting inside a moment that did not move. The old man's hands remained still, warm and relaxed. His fingers rested naturally, curved gently as if holding nothing at all. There was no tension left to release, only quiet to remain within. The night outside stayed deep and patient. No sound reached the house. No light passed through the windows. The world beyond had slowed to the same gentle rhythm, matching the peace inside. Even thoughts had grown tired. They no longer drifted in or out. They simply stayed away, leaving behind a clear, open calm. The mind rested without effort, floating comfortably in a place where nothing needed attention. The chair supported him silently, firm and steady. It did not creak or shift. It felt timeless, as though it had always been there for moments like this, moments meant only for rest. The old man's face remained serene. A faint softness settled around his eyes and mouth, the kind that comes only with true ease. There was no sign of worry, no trace of strain. Everything had been set down for the night. Sleep deepened, not suddenly, but gently, like a slow descent into warmth. It did not pull him away. It held him closer. The silence became thicker, richer, but never heavy. It wrapped itself around every sound that might have existed and softened it into nothing. Even the sense of breathing faded slightly, becoming part of the calm rather than separate from it. The night stayed exactly where it was. The old man stayed exactly where he was. And together they rested, quiet, unchanging, and completely at peace. Nothing changed. And that was exactly how it was meant to be. The quiet stayed settled, unmoving, like it had chosen this moment and decided to remain. The air felt still but gentle, resting softly against the old man's skin. There was no chill, no warmth, only balance. His breathing had become so smooth that it was barely noticeable now. Each breath blended into the next, forming a slow, steady flow that required no thought, no effort. His chest rose and fell in a rhythm so calm it felt timeless. The room seemed to drift farther away, not in distance but in importance. The walls no longer defined the space. The ceiling no longer hovered above. Everything physical softened into a quiet awareness, leaving only comfort behind. The chair continued to support him without sound. It held his weight evenly, steadily, as if it had learned the exact shape of rest. There was no pressure, no need to shift or adjust. The body had found its perfect position and stayed there. The old man's hands rested where they were, heavy and relaxed. His arms felt warm, comfortably still, as though they had gently settled into sleep long before the rest of him followed. Outside, the night remained unchanged. No wind stirred, no distant noise drifted through the darkness. The world beyond the house seemed paused, holding its breath in quiet respect for the stillness inside. Time no longer felt like something passing. It felt wide and open, stretched gently across the darkness. Seconds dissolved into nothing. Minutes lost their meaning. There was only this calm, this soft awareness of rest. Even the idea of thought had faded. There were no memories rising, no plans forming. The mind had grown quiet and smooth, like a surface untouched by movement. Sleep rested close now, closer than ever. It did not arrive suddenly. It did not announce itself. It simply deepened, slowly and patiently, wrapping the old man in a heavier calm. His face remained peaceful. Every line softened further, every muscle fully released. There was no effort left anywhere in him. The night carried him gently without resistance. The silence thickened just slightly, becoming richer, deeper, more complete. It absorbed everything, leaving nothing behind but rest. The old man stayed still. The night stayed still. And together, they remained there, suspended in calm, held by silence, drifting deeper into a rest that felt endless and safe. The silence remained exactly as it was, unbroken and complete. It did not feel empty. It felt full, as though it contained everything it needed and nothing more. The air held a soft weight, gentle and steady, settling comfortably around the old man without asking anything of him. His breathing continued in its slow, natural rhythm. Each breath flowed in quietly, rested for a moment, and then drifted back out again. There was no pause that needed attention, no breath that felt rushed or shallow. It was the breathing of someone who had nowhere else to be. The chair beneath him stayed perfectly still. It made no sound. It offered no resistance. It simply existed, firm and reliable, allowing rest to deepen naturally. The old man did not shift or adjust. His body had already chosen stillness and accepted it fully. The room seemed softer now, as though its edges had faded. Corners no longer mattered. Distance no longer mattered. Everything blended into one calm, quiet space that held him gently. The darkness remained smooth and even. It did not press in. It did not pull away. It stayed balanced, protective, and calm, like a quiet blanket laid gently across the room. Outside the house, the night continued without change. The world beyond the walls felt far away, distant and quiet, as if it had slowly stepped back and decided not to interfere. Time felt slow but not dragging. It felt wide and open, spreading gently in all directions. There was no sense of waiting, no sense of ending, only continuation. The old man's hands rested where they had been for a long while now. They felt heavy in a comforting way, as if the weight itself was proof that rest had arrived. His arms no longer carried any tension. They belonged completely to the stillness. His face remained peaceful and relaxed. The lines of age softened further, shaped now by calm rather than thought. There was nothing held behind his eyes, nothing forming in his mind. Just quiet. Sleep lingered very close, closer than thought, closer than memory. It did not rush forward. It waited patiently, knowing there was no resistance left. The silence deepened just a little more, becoming thicker and warmer. It filled every space gently, leaving no gaps, no edges. The night stayed steady. The old man stayed still. And the calm continued to carry him, slowly and gently, deeper into rest, where nothing needed to happen and nothing needed to change. The calm did not move. It stayed exactly where it was, settled and complete. The air in the room felt gently balanced, neither cool nor warm, simply present. It rested against the old man without drawing attention to itself. There was nothing in the air that needed to be noticed, and that made it perfect. His breathing continued at the same slow, even pace. Each breath arrived quietly, lingered softly, and then faded away. There was no effort behind it now. Breathing had become automatic, natural, and deeply relaxed. The chair held him with steady patience. Its surface felt familiar, unchanged, reliable. It did not creak or shift. It simply supported him, allowing the stillness to deepen without interruption. The room seemed quieter than before, though no sound had left. It was as if the silence itself had grown smoother, more settled. The walls absorbed everything. The floor remained solid and calm beneath him. Darkness stayed gentle and even. It did not feel heavy. It did not feel empty. It felt protective, like a soft covering that asked nothing and offered everything. Outside, the night remained perfectly still. No distant movement reached the house. No change announced itself. The world beyond continued its quiet pause, allowing this calm to remain untouched. Time felt slow and wide. It did not press forward. It did not pull backward. It simply existed, stretched gently across the silence. Moments blended together until they no longer needed names. The old man's hands stayed relaxed in his lap. They felt warm and settled, free from tension. His fingers did not move. They had no reason to. His shoulders remained low and loose. His neck rested comfortably. His body felt evenly supported, as though every part had found the exact position it needed and decided to stay there. Thoughts did not rise. Memories did not form. The mind had grown quiet and smooth, like still water undisturbed by wind. There was nothing to consider, nothing to remember, nothing to plan. Sleep stayed very close now, closer than awareness. It did not rush forward or pull him in. It waited calmly, knowing that everything was already ready. The silence deepened once more, becoming richer and more complete. It filled the space gently, leaving nothing uncovered. The night remained steady. The old man remained still. And the calm continued, slow and patient, carrying him further into rest, where nothing changes and nothing needs to. Nothing interrupted the calm. The stillness remained smooth and unbroken, as if it had settled into its final shape. The room felt complete in its quiet, needing no movement, no sound, no change. The old man's breathing stayed slow and even. Each breath felt softer than the one before, blending gently into the silence. There was no awareness of inhaling or exhaling now. It happened on its own, steady and peaceful. The chair continued to support him without effort. It felt solid and dependable beneath him, holding his weight evenly. There was no pressure anywhere in his body that asked for attention. Everything felt settled, finished. The darkness remained gentle and calm. It wrapped around the room evenly, smoothing away detail and shape. Nothing stood out. Nothing demanded focus. The night simply existed. Outside the house, the world stayed distant and quiet. No sound traveled through the walls. No sign of motion disturbed the stillness. Everything beyond felt far away, unimportant, and safely removed. Time had almost disappeared now. It no longer felt like something moving forward. It felt wide and quiet, stretched gently across the night. Moments passed without being noticed, dissolving as soon as they formed. The old man's hands rested heavily in his lap. They felt warm and relaxed, completely free of tension. His arms felt comfortably supported, as though they had been resting this way for a very long time. His face remained peaceful. Every line had softened. His jaw stayed loose. His brow remained smooth. There was no expression left to hold. Only rest remained. Thoughts no longer came and went. The mind felt empty in the best possible way, quiet, still, and smooth. Nothing rose to the surface. Nothing lingered beneath it. Sleep felt closer than ever now. It hovered gently, patient, and calm. It did not rush. It did not pull. It waited, knowing that nothing stood in its way. The silence deepened again, becoming thicker and warmer. It filled every corner of the room without effort, wrapping everything in calm. The night stayed steady. The old man stayed still, and the quiet continued to carry him gently, deeper into rest, where awareness fades and calm remains, slow and endless, without beginning or end. The stillness did not fade. It stayed settled, calm, and complete, as though it had found its perfect balance and chosen not to move again. The room felt gently held inside the silence, protected from anything that might disturb it. The old man's breathing continued quietly, slow and deep. Each breath moved so smoothly that it was almost impossible to notice where one ended and the next began. His body no longer followed the breath. The breath followed the body, easy and natural. The chair remained steady beneath him, unchanged and dependable. It felt as if it had become part of the room itself, no longer an object, but a quiet place of rest that asked nothing and gave everything. The darkness felt softer now, like a deep shadow without edges. It did not press in. It did not pull away. It simply stayed, calm and even, filling the space gently. Outside, the night continued in complete stillness. No distant sound arrived. No movement stirred the air. The world beyond the walls seemed far removed, quiet and irrelevant. Time felt almost completely gone. It no longer had direction or meaning. There was no sense of before or after. There was only this calm moment, stretched gently and endlessly. The old man's hands rested heavily in his lap, warm and loose. His fingers remained slightly curved, relaxed beyond effort. There was no urge to move them, no reason to. His shoulders stayed low and soft. His neck rested comfortably. Every part of him felt supported, balanced, and free from tension. Nothing asked for adjustment. Nothing needed attention. His face remained peaceful and still. The lines of age looked gentle now, shaped by calm and rest. His mouth rested naturally. His eyes remained closed, settled deep into quiet. Thought had completely faded. There were no words forming, no images appearing. The mind felt empty, smooth, and quiet, like still water untouched by wind. Sleep hovered very close, closer than awareness itself. It did not arrive suddenly. It did not announce itself. It simply deepened, slowly and patiently. The silence grew richer, thicker, more complete. It filled every space without effort, leaving no gaps, no edges, no movement. The night remained steady. The old man remained still, and the calm continued to carry him gently forward, deeper into rest, where nothing changes, nothing matters, and everything feels quietly complete. The quiet stayed exactly where it was. It did not thin or weaken. It did not drift away. It settled more deeply, as if it had gently pressed itself into the room and decided to remain there for the rest of the night. The old man's breathing continued, slow and steady, moving without effort. Each breath felt soft and complete, rising and falling with perfect ease. There was no awareness attached to it now. Breathing simply happened, calm and reliable. The chair beneath him remained firm and silent. It supported him evenly, without pressure, without sound. It felt as though it had always been there, holding him in this same quiet way. The room felt distant now, not far away, but unimportant. The shape of the walls no longer mattered. The ceiling no longer defined the space. Everything blended into one gentle awareness of calm. Darkness filled the room smoothly. It carried no weight, no tension. It rested evenly across everything, softening edges and removing detail until only comfort remained. Outside the house, the night stayed perfectly still. No wind moved, no sound traveled. The world beyond remained quiet and patient, as if it understood that nothing should disturb this moment. Time felt almost completely dissolved. There was no sense of passing minutes, no awareness of before or after. Only this wide, quiet presence remained, stretching gently without end. The old man's hands stayed relaxed in his lap. They felt warm and heavy in a comforting way, fully released. His arms rested naturally, supported and calm. His face remained peaceful. The muscles stayed loose. His expression held no thought, no memory, no concern. It was the face of someone who had let go completely. The mind stayed quiet. No thoughts formed. No images appeared. There was nothing to hold on to and nothing to release. The mind rested like still water, smooth and undisturbed. Sleep remained close, closer than ever before. It did not rush forward. It did not pull him in. It simply waited, knowing there was nothing left to prepare. The silence deepened slightly again, becoming richer and warmer. It filled the room gently, leaving nothing uncovered. The night stayed steady. The old man stayed still. And the calm continued, slow and patient, carrying him further into rest, where awareness fades and the quiet remains, soft and endless. Nothing needed to happen anymore. The quiet had settled into its deepest form, smooth and complete, like a calm that no longer knew how to change. The room felt gently suspended in silence, held safely within the stillness of the night. The old man's breathing had become barely noticeable now. Each breath flowed naturally, without effort or awareness. His body rested fully, deeply relaxed, as though it had slowly drifted beyond the edge of wakefulness. The chair continued to hold him, steady and patient. It did not move. It did not make a sound. It simply remained there, doing exactly what it had done all night, supporting rest without asking anything in return. The darkness felt warm and even, wrapping softly around everything in the room. There were no sharp edges, no details left to notice. Only calm remained, gentle and complete. Outside, the night stayed still. The world beyond the walls felt far away and unimportant, quiet and distant. Nothing reached in, nothing called out. Everything respected the silence. Time no longer existed in any meaningful way. It had softened and spread until it disappeared completely. There was no before, no after. Only this quiet moment remained, wide and peaceful. The old man's hands rested loosely in his lap, heavy and warm. His arms felt fully supported. His shoulders stayed low and relaxed. There was no tension left anywhere in his body. His face remained calm and peaceful. Every line had softened. Every muscle had released. There was no thought behind his closed eyes. No memory. No expectation. The mind had grown completely quiet. Thoughts no longer formed. Images no longer appeared. The mind rested like still water, smooth and undisturbed. Sleep had arrived gently, without announcement. It had not rushed or pulled. It had simply settled in, slowly and patiently, filling the quiet completely. The silence became deeper still, rich and full, holding everything softly. Nothing moved, nothing changed. The night remained steady. The old man remained still, and everything felt finished, calm and safe, resting quietly in the gentle darkness where nothing is required and nothing needs to be done. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. Thank you for listening.